Hey everyone, Olivia here. And oh my goodness, do I have a story for you today. You will not believe what happened to me yesterday. It's absolutely ridiculous, and honestly, thinking about it now, it's actually pretty hilarious. It all started with, well, an argument. With my friend. Can you believe it? We argued over the silliest, most trivial things. I mean, we were practically debating the merits of different types of ice cream cones, waffle versus sugar cone, you know? It escalated so quickly, and in the moment, I was so frustrated. I felt like I was being completely misunderstood, and the whole thing felt so blown out of proportion. But now, looking back, I can't help but laugh. It was such a silly thing to get worked up about, and I'm already excited to tell her about it and laugh together. The whole experience just reminded me how important it is to not take things too seriously sometimes. So, let's begin our exciting journey of English improvement together with this story of friendship, ice cream, and ridiculous arguments. New videos are released daily, focusing on English speaking and listening skills to help you improve and enjoy your learning journey. Okay, so, you are never going to believe what happened to me the other day. It all started with a sandwich. A sandwich, right? Sounds simple enough. But oh honey, it was an odyssey. An epic tale of culinary ambition, thwarted by, well, life. Grab a cuppa, settle in, this is a long one. You see, I'd had this craving. A deep, primal craving for the perfect turkey and Swiss. Not just any turkey and Swiss, mind you. I'm talking crusty sourdough, crisp lettuce, juicy tomato, that tangy bite of Dijon. I could practically taste it. It was a vision, a culinary masterpiece shimmering on the horizon of my hunger. So, I embarked on this quest, right? Picture me, hair a bit messy, probably still in my slippers, bravely venturing into the kitchen. The sunlight was streaming in through the window, dust motes dancing in the golden rays, you know, that kind of peaceful morning vibe. Totally deceptive, because the kitchen? It was a landscape. Dishes from the night before, a stray cereal bowl perched precariously on the edge of the counter, the lingering aroma of, was that burnt toast from yesterday? Yeah, definitely burnt toast. But I was undeterred. My sandwich destiny awaited. I opened the fridge and stared. It was like staring into the abyss. You know that feeling when you open the fridge expecting abundance and are met with emptiness? Like a cosmic joke? Well, there it was. No turkey. No turkey. Deflated doesn't even begin to cover it. I mean, what's a turkey and Swiss without the turkey? I slumped against the counter, a tragic heroine in my own kitchen drama. But then, a flicker of hope. Hidden behind a jar of pickles, who even eats that many pickles, was a small container of leftover roast chicken. Not ideal, but workable. It was a compromise, but sometimes you gotta compromise, right? Okay, crisis averted. Onto the sourdough. I grabbed my trusty bread knife, the one with the slightly chipped handle, you know the one I'm talking about? And began to saw, or rather, attempted to saw. This sourdough, it was formidable. Like trying to cut through a brick with a butter knife. I wrestled with it, crumbs flying everywhere, the loaf protesting with every agonizing inch. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I managed to hack off 2 uneven slices. They weren't pretty, but they were mine. Hard-won trophies of my bread-slicing battle. Now, the lettuce. I had this beautiful head of romaine, crisp and green, just begging to be a part of my sandwich masterpiece. I rinsed it under the tap, the cool water a welcome sensation against my now slightly flour-dusted hands. And then, as I was carefully patting it dry with a paper towel, disaster. I ripped a leaf, and then another, and another. Suddenly, my beautiful romaine resembled something more akin to shredded confetti than sandwich-worthy lettuce. I swear, it was like the lettuce was mocking me. Are you serious? I muttered to myself, probably sounding a bit unhinged. But hey, we all talk to our produce sometimes, right? Don't judge. Okay, deep breaths. Salvage operation. I managed to gather enough semi-intact leaves to form a somewhat respectable lettuce layer. Next, the tomato. I sliced it carefully, the vibrant red a welcome splash of color against the beige of the chicken and the slightly mangled sourdough. A thin layer of Dijon, the tangy mustard, a promise of flavor amidst the chaos, and almost there. But wait, something was missing. That crucial element, the final flourish, the Swiss cheese. I rummaged through the fridge again, my hopes dwindling. And then, tucked away in the back, behind a suspicious-looking container of leftovers, I'm pretty sure it was from last week, or maybe the week before, was a lone slice of Swiss. A single, glorious slice. It was a sign. The sandwich gods were smiling upon me. I placed the cheese carefully on top, closed the sandwich with a sense of profound accomplishment, and it wouldn't close. The filling, in all its chaotic glory, was simply too much for the poor, beleaguered sourdough to contain. It bulged, it strained, it threatened to explode. I stared at it, a mixture of amusement and despair swirling within me. This sandwich, it was a metaphor for life, wasn't it? All that striving, all that effort, and sometimes, things just don't quite fit. But I wasn't giving up. No sir. I grabbed a toothpick, stabbed it through the unruly sandwich, effectively pinning it shut. There. Done. My masterpiece. My Frankenstein's monster of a sandwich. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I took a bite. And you know what? It was delicious. The sourdough, despite its battle scars, was chewy and flavorful. The chicken, while not my first choice, was surprisingly satisfying. The slightly mangled lettuce, the lone slice of Swiss, the tangy Dijon, it all came together in a symphony of flavor. It was a testament to perseverance, a tribute to the art of making do, a celebration of the imperfect. So, there you have it. The epic saga of how I made a sandwich. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't easy, but it was an experience. And you know what? Sometimes, the most memorable meals aren't the ones in fancy restaurants, or the ones meticulously prepared from gourmet recipes. They're the ones made with whatever you have on hand, with a little bit of creativity, a lot of laughter, and maybe, just maybe, a toothpick or two. So, the next time you're craving a sandwich, remember my story. Embrace the chaos. Embrace the imperfection. And most importantly, embrace the journey. Because sometimes, the journey is just as important as the destination. Even if the destination is just a sandwich. Okay, so, you are never going to believe this story. It's about my first time ice skating, right? And it's legendary. At least in my own mind. Grab a cup of something warm because this is going to take a while. See, I grew up in this tiny little town, practically smack dab in the middle of nowhere. We had more cows than people, honestly. So, ice skating? Not exactly a common activity. The closest we got was sliding around on frozen puddles in the winter, which, let me tell you, is a completely different ball game. Anyway, I must have been about, maybe 10 or 11. And this big, fancy ice rink opened up in the nearest city, about an hour's drive away. It was a huge deal. Everyone was talking about it. And me, being the adventurous, slightly clumsy kid I was, I needed to go. Needed to. Like, it was a matter of life or death, you know. So, my mom, bless her heart, agreed to take me. It was a Saturday, I remember, crisp and cold, the kind of day where your breath puffs out in white clouds. We bundled up in layers, hats, scarves, mittens the size of my head, the whole 9 yards. The car ride was filled with this buzzing anticipation. I was practically vibrating in my seat. I'd seen ice skating on TV, of course. Graceful figures gliding effortlessly across the ice, spinning, leaping. I was convinced I'd be a natural. Oh, the sweet, sweet naivety of youth. We finally arrived, and just seeing the rink took my breath away. It was this vast expanse of gleaming white, under these bright, buzzing overhead lights. The air smelled cold and sharp, with a faint hint of, I don't know, rubber, maybe? From the skates? And the sound. The scraping of blades on ice, the chatter of excited voices, the faint tinny music playing over the loudspeakers, it was intoxicating. Sensory overload in the best possible way. Then came the moment of truth. Putting on the skates. Now, have you ever tried to put on ice skates for the first time? Because let me tell you, it's not as easy as it looks. These clunky, stiff boots, laces that seemed to go on forever. My mom had to practically wrestle them onto my feet. And when I finally stood up, whoa, talk about unstable. I felt like a newborn giraffe trying to take its first steps. Wobbly, shaky, and convinced I was about to faceplant directly onto the ice. My mom, bless her again, held my hand tight as we slowly, very slowly, shuffled towards the entrance to the rink. And that's when the real fun began. Stepping onto the ice was like stepping onto another planet. My feet, normally so reliable, instantly betrayed me. I slipped, I slid, I flailed. It was pure chaos. I remember grabbing onto the side rails for dear life, my knuckles turning white. I looked around and saw these little kids, like 5-year-olds, zipping past me like miniature Olympians. It was humbling, to say the least. My mom, ever the optimist, kept encouraging me. You'll get it, she said, her voice laced with amusement. Just take your time. Easy for her to say. She was standing firmly on solid ground. I, on the other hand, was engaged in a desperate battle against gravity. After what felt like an eternity, I managed to take a few tentative steps without immediately falling. Progress. I even let go of the side rail for a brief, glorious moment. And then, well, let's just say I became intimately acquainted with the ice. Yup, I fell hard. My backside hit the ice with a resounding thud that echoed through the entire rink. I'm pretty sure everyone within a 5-mile radius heard it. My cheeks burned with embarrassment. I wanted to melt into a puddle and disappear. But then something unexpected happened. A little girl, maybe 7 or 8, skated over to me. She had bright pink earmuffs and a gap-toothed grin. Are you okay? She asked, her voice full of concern. I mumbled something about being fine, even though my pride was severely bruised. Here, she said, extending a mittened hand. I'll help you up. And she did. She pulled me to my feet, and then, without a word, she started skating slowly beside me, holding my hand. Can you believe it? This tiny little human, who probably weighed less than my backpack, was my ice skating guardian angel. She patiently skated with me, giving me tips, encouraging me, and even giggling with me when I inevitably wobbled. I don't know how long we skated together, but it was long enough for me to start feeling, well, not exactly confident, but less like a baby deer on roller skates. Eventually, the little girl's mom called her over, and she waved goodbye, skating off with the effortless grace I could only dream of. I watched her go, feeling a surprising pang of sadness. She was a total stranger, yet she'd shown me more kindness than I'd expected. It was a small moment, but it stuck with me. The rest of my time at the ice rink was eventful. I fell a few more times, yes. I definitely wasn't winning any awards for elegance. But I kept getting back up. I started to find a rhythm, a balance. I even managed to glide for a few short stretches without clinging to the side rails. It wasn't pretty, but it was progress. By the time we left, my legs were aching, my gloves were soaked, and my backside was probably a lovely shade of purple. But you know what? I was grinning. I had faced my fear, conquered the ice, sort of, and even made a new friend, however briefly. The car ride home was much quieter than the ride there. I was exhausted, but content. I stared out the window, watching the blurry lights whiz by, replaying the events of the day in my head. The falls, the wobbles, the little girl's kindness, it all swirled together in a jumble of memories. So, yeah, that was my first time ice skating. A disaster? Maybe. A comedy of errors? Definitely. But also, strangely, a triumph. It taught me about resilience, about kindness, and about the unexpected joys of stepping outside your comfort zone, even if it means landing on your butt in front of a crowd of strangers. And, you know what? I'd do it all over again in a heartbeat. Maybe next time, I'll even learn how to stop without crashing into the wall. Baby steps, right? Baby steps. Hey everyone. Learning a new language can feel like climbing a mountain, right? But trust me, it's totally doable, and even enjoyable. Think about it. Even your idols once spoke awkwardly. Imagine your favorite singer or actor fumbling for words when they first started. They didn't give up, and look at them now. It just shows that everyone starts somewhere, and with practice, fluency will come. You've already taken the biggest step by actively practicing, so give yourself a pat on the back. You got this. And you know what? Something fun you can try is explaining your bucket list in English. Picture this. You're making dinner, and you start telling your family or even yourself about all the amazing things you want to do, like visiting the Eiffel Tower or learning to play the guitar, all in English. It's a lighthearted way to incorporate speaking practice into your daily routine, and it's surprisingly effective. Plus, it keeps you motivated by reminding you of your dreams. Do you also find yourself feeling isolated in group discussions? You understand what everyone is saying in English, you're following along, nodding your head, but when it's your turn to speak, silence. It's a common feeling, believe me. You might worry about making mistakes or not sounding fluent enough. It can be truly frustrating to feel like you're on the sidelines when you really want to join in. But remember, every single person learning a language has experienced this at some point. You are not alone. You will not believe what happened next. I was at a coffee shop the other day, eavesdropping, I know, bad habit, and I overheard someone practicing English on a language learning app. Honestly, it felt like magic. It made me wonder about all the different ways people are learning and improving. So, what apps or tools help you practice English speaking? I'd love to hear your recommendations and maybe discover something new myself. Sharing is caring, right? Let's chat in the comments below. So, picture this. It's a blazing hot summer day, the kind where the air shimmers above the asphalt, and you can practically feel the sun baking your brain. I'm at this gorgeous lake, Lake Como, no less, yes, the Lake Como in Italy, surrounded by these majestic mountains, the water sparkling like a million scattered diamonds. And I'm thinking, okay, this is it. Today, I conquer windsurfing. Now, I've always been drawn to water sports. Swimming? Love it. Kayaking? Piece of cake. But windsurfing? It had this air of effortless cool, this almost balletic grace that I found utterly mesmerizing. I mean, have you ever seen someone really good at it? They just glide across the water, all serene and powerful, like they're dancing with the wind. I wanted that. So there I was, signed up for a beginner's lesson, heart pounding a rhythm against my ribs that sounded suspiciously like a tribal drum. The instructor, this tanned, wiry guy named Marco, was all smiles and boundless energy. He started explaining the basics, the parts of the board, how to position your feet, the whole shebang. Honestly, it sounded simple enough. Yeah, got it, I thought, nodding along like I was already a pro. Famous last words, right? He hands me this massive sail, heavier than I expected, and suddenly, all that confidence evaporated faster than a puddle in the desert sun. Okay, Marco says, his voice echoing across the still water, first, we'll practice on land. Land practice. Sounds reasonable, doesn't it? Except, even on dry land, this thing felt like wrestling a giant, unruly kite. The wind, which had seemed so gentle just moments before, now felt like a mischievous imp determined to yank me off my feet. I stumbled, I wobbled, I nearly took out a sunbathing tourist with a rogue sail maneuver. It wasn't exactly graceful. Let's just say I wasn't channeling any balletic grace at that point. More like a drunken giraffe on roller skates. Marco, bless his patient soul, kept offering encouraging words and helpful tips. Bend your knees. Look where you want to go. Loosen your grip. It was a lot to take in. You know that feeling when your brain is trying to process about a million instructions at once, and it just sort of short-circuits? Yeah, that was me. After what felt like an eternity of land-based wrestling, Marco finally declared me ready for the water. Ready? He asked, a twinkle in his eye. As ready as I'll ever be, I mumbled, trying to project an air of confidence I definitely didn't feel. Stepping onto the board in the water was a whole different ball game. The board wobbled precariously beneath my feet, threatening to launch me into the lake. The wind tugged at the sail, pulling me this way and that. And the water, oh, the water. It was so clear, so blue, so inviting. I took a deep breath, the cool, fresh air filling my lungs, a stark contrast to the nervous heat radiating from my skin. The smell of the lake, a mix of fresh water and something subtly earthy, calmed me slightly. For a few glorious seconds, I actually managed to stand upright, the sail catching the wind, the board gliding smoothly across the surface. I'm doing it, I thought, a triumphant grin spreading across my face. I'm actually windsurfing. And then, just as quickly as it had begun, it ended. The wind shifted, the sail swung wildly, and I plunged headfirst into the lake, swallowing a mouthful of surprisingly refreshing water. Spluttering and coughing, I resurfaced, my hair plastered to my face, my ego slightly bruised. Marco, ever the optimist, called out, "Good. You're getting the hang of it." Getting the hang of it? I thought. I felt more like I was getting the dunk of it. But you know what? I wasn't discouraged. Not really. There was something exhilarating about the challenge, about the feeling of harnessing the wind's power, even if it was only for a fleeting moment. So, I climbed back onto the board, determined to try again. And again. And again. The rest of the lesson was a blur of splashes, stumbles, and small victories. I learned the hard way that windsurfing requires a delicate balance, not just physical balance, but a balance between control and surrender. You have to be firm, yet flexible. You have to anticipate the wind, work with it, not against it. It's a dance, really, a conversation between you and the elements. I fell countless times, each time swallowing a bit more lake water, each time emerging a little more humbled, but also a little more determined. There were moments of pure frustration, where I wanted to throw the sail to the wind, literally, and swim back to shore. There were moments of sheer joy, where I caught the wind just right and glided across the water, feeling a sense of freedom and exhilaration I'd never experienced before. By the end of the lesson, I was exhausted, soaked to the bone, and covered in a fine layer of lake grime. But I was also grinning from ear to ear. I hadn't exactly mastered windsurfing, not by a long shot. But I'd tasted it. I'd felt that magical connection with the wind and the water. And I knew, deep down, that I'd be back for more. Looking back, it wasn't about conquering the sport. It was about embracing the challenge, the clumsiness, the inevitable tumbles. It was about the feeling of the sun on my skin, the wind in my hair, the cool water against my face. It was about the quiet moments of reflection, floating on the board, surrounded by the breathtaking beauty of Lake Como, feeling a sense of peace and connection to something larger than myself. So, yeah, the day I tried windsurfing wasn't exactly picture perfect. It was messy, it was humbling, it was real. And sometimes, the real, messy experiences are the ones that stick with you the most. You know what I mean? They're the ones that teach you the most about yourself, about your resilience, about the simple joy of trying something new, even if you end up looking like a drunken giraffe on roller skates in the process. And who knows, maybe one day, I'll even achieve that effortless, balletic grace I so admire. But until then, I'll keep practicing, keep falling, and keep embracing the beautiful chaos of it all. Because that's where the real magic lies, isn't it? In the journey, not the destination. Right? Right. Anyway, enough about me. Tell me, what have you been up to? Okay, so, picture this. I'm maybe 10, 11 years old, all elbows and knees, a permanent smudge of something, probably chocolate, on my cheek. Summer vacation stretches out before me like a shimmering, endless ocean. And I'm bored. B-O-R-E-D. You know that kind of bored where even the ants marching across the patio seem to be having a more exciting time than you? Yeah, that kind. My grandma, bless her heart, she always had a project. Always. Whether it was knitting enough scarves to outfit a small army or perfecting her prize-winning zucchini bread, that woman never sat still. And that particular summer, her project was pillows. Not just any pillows, mind you. Fancy, embroidered, ruffled, practically regal pillows. I remember watching her, mesmerized, as her needle danced across the fabric, weaving magic with threads of silk and cotton. The way she could transform a plain square of cloth into something beautiful, something useful, it was like alchemy. Now, I, on the other hand, was about as graceful with a needle as a walrus on a tightrope. My attempts at anything even remotely crafty usually ended in disaster. A lopsided clay pot, a finger-pricked cross-stitch, you get the picture. So, the idea of me sewing? Hilarious. But that boredom, it was a powerful motivator. It gnawed at me, whispered insidious suggestions of mischief, and finally, in a moment of utter desperation, I decided I would learn to sew a pillowcase. I marched into the living room where Grandma sat, surrounded by a mountain of floral fabric, and declared my intentions. She looked at me over her half-moon spectacles, a twinkle in her eye. A pillowcase, you say? Well, all right then. Let's see what we can do. She didn't laugh, which I appreciated. No condescending chuckles, no "oh honey, maybe something a little less ambitious?" Just a calm, accepting, all right then. It was a small thing, but it made me feel seen. My first lesson was in the art of fabric selection. Grandma's fabric stash was legendary. It filled an entire closet, overflowing with textures and patterns that could make your head spin. Silks that shimmered like mermaid scales, velvets softer than a kitten's ear, cottons printed with everything from tiny wildflowers to giant, psychedelic sunflowers. It was a sensory overload. I ran my hands over the fabrics, breathing in the slightly musty scent of aged cotton. The faint, sweet perfume of lavender sachets tucked between the folds. Finally, I settled on a cheerful yellow gingham. It reminded me of sunshine and lemonade, of picnics in the park and lazy afternoons spent swinging in the hammock. Perfect. Next came the measuring and cutting. Now, this, I thought, I can handle. A ruler, a pair of scissors, piece of cake, right? Wrong. Apparently, there was a precise science to this, involving strange words like selvage and bias cut that made my head spin. Grandma patiently explained, demonstrating how to fold the fabric just so, how to line up the ruler, how to make a clean, straight cut. Easier said than done, let me tell you. My first attempt looked less like a rectangle and more like a, well, let's just say it wouldn't have fit any pillow I'd ever seen. Don't worry, child, Grandma chuckled, her eyes crinkling at the corners. Practice makes perfect. She showed me again, slower this time, guiding my hand as I made another attempt. Better, but still not quite rectangular. We went through this process several times, the air filled with the rhythmic snip 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 of the scissors, the gentle rustle of fabric, and Grandma's soft, encouraging words. Eventually, after what felt like an eternity, I managed to produce two somewhat rectangular pieces of yellow gingham. Victory. Now came the real challenge, the sewing machine. This beast of a machine, a Vintage Singer with more knobs and levers than the cockpit of a spaceship, had always intimidated me. It hummed with a low, almost menacing purr, and the needle flashed up and down with dizzying speed. I was convinced it would either sew my fingers together or swallow me whole. Grandma, however, treated it like an old friend. She oiled its gears, adjusted its tension, and explained its workings with the familiarity of someone who had shared countless hours, countless stories, with this metal companion. She showed me how to thread the needle, a feat of dexterity that required more patience than I thought I possessed, how to control the foot pedal, how to guide the fabric under the needle. My first attempts were comical. The stitches zigged and zagged like a drunken bee, the fabric bunched and puckered. I broke the thread more times than I could count. I swear, that sewing machine was mocking me. But Grandma, she never lost her patience. She rethreaded the needle, smoothed out the fabric, and guided my hand, her touch firm but gentle. Slowly, painstakingly, stitch by hesitant stitch, I began to get the hang of it. The lines became straighter, the fabric flowed more smoothly under the needle, the machine's hum became less menacing and more rhythmic, almost soothing. It wasn't perfect, not by a long shot. The seams were wonky, the corners a little abstract, but it was a pillowcase. My pillowcase. And as I held it up, slightly crooked seams and all, a wave of pride washed over me. I had done it. I had conquered the sewing machine. That night, I slept on my slightly lopsided, slightly wonky, utterly perfect pillowcase. The yellow gingham felt cool and smooth against my cheek, and the scent of fresh cotton filled my dreams. It wasn't just a pillowcase. It was a symbol of perseverance, a testament to the power of patience, and a tangible reminder of the love and guidance of my grandma. And you know what? It's still one of my most treasured possessions. It might not be much to look at, but it holds more memories than any perfectly sewn, store-bought pillowcase ever could. Because it's not just about the finished product, is it? It's about the journey, the lessons learned, the connections made along the way. And that, my friend, is a story worth more than all the silk and satin in the world. So, the next time you see a simple pillowcase, remember this story, and maybe, just maybe, you'll see it a little differently. You know what I mean? It's the little things, the seemingly insignificant moments, that often hold the greatest meaning. Hey everyone, learning a new language can feel like climbing a mountain, right? But the most beautiful thing you can do is start. Think about it. That very first step, that initial spark of courage to even try, is where the magic begins. It's a testament to your willingness to grow, to embrace something new, and honestly, that's incredibly inspiring. And you know what? Every single word you learn, every sentence you speak, brings you closer to the summit. You've got this. I have a fun little idea for you to practice speaking more. How about introducing yourself differently each time? You could be a coffee enthusiast exploring the world of English, one day, and a future novelist practicing their dialogue, the next. It's such a simple thing, but it can spark your creativity. And make practicing feel less like a chore, even if it's just while you're cooking dinner or out for a walk. You will not believe how much more comfortable you'll feel just by playing with language a little. And tell me, do you also find yourself getting distracted and losing focus while speaking? It's like, you have all these words in your head, ready to go, and then suddenly, poof. They vanish. It happens to the best of us, honestly. It's totally normal to feel that wave of self-doubt creep in, or to suddenly forget the word you were searching for. Remember, you're building a new skill, and these little hiccups are just part of the journey. Speaking of hiccups, you know, I was chatting with someone the other day and completely blanked on a simple phrase. It was so frustrating, and it got me thinking. How do you correct yourself when speaking English? Do you just keep going, or do you pause and try again? It would be awesome to hear your strategies. I'm always looking for new tips. Let's chat in the comments. Okay, so, you know how sometimes a memory just sticks with you. Like, it's not necessarily some huge, life-altering event, but it's just precious? Well, my first picnic is one of those memories. I must have been, maybe 6 or 7 years old, a real little sprout. And it felt like the grandest adventure. We didn't have a lot growing up, you know? Fancy vacations were out of the question. But my mom, she was a magician with making the ordinary feel extraordinary. She could whip up a sense of occasion out of thin air. So, this picnic, it wasn't just a meal outside. It was an event. It all started with the planning. Weeks before, maybe even a whole month, Mom started dropping hints. Wouldn't it be lovely to have a picnic? She'd say, her eyes all sparkly. We could go to Willow Creek Park, spread a blanket under the big oak tree. And I'd be bouncing off the walls with excitement. Willow Creek Park. It felt like going to a different country, even though it was just a short bus ride away. The day itself dawned bright and sunny, a perfect picnic day, if there ever was one. I remember waking up to the smell of Mom humming in the kitchen and the clatter of pans. She was making fried chicken, her specialty. The smell alone could make your stomach rumble like a happy monster. And there were deviled eggs, creamy potato salad, and her famous cherry pie, the one with the lattice crust that just melted in your mouth. Just thinking about it now makes my mouth water. Packing the picnic basket was a ceremony in itself. We had this old wicker basket, a bit battered and worn around the edges, but it held so much more than food. It held anticipation, you know? Each item was carefully placed. The checkered tablecloth, mismatched plates and cutlery, we never had a proper set, napkins folded into triangles, a thermos of lemonade, the real stuff, made with freshly squeezed lemons. It was a feast fit for royalty, at least in my little girl eyes. The bus ride to Willow Creek Park felt like an eternity. I kept fidgeting, peering out the window, desperate to catch my first glimpse of the park. Every green space we passed, I'd think, is that it? Is that it? And Mom would just smile patiently and say, almost there, sweetheart. And then, finally, we arrived. Willow Creek Park was even more magical than I remembered. The air was thick with the scent of freshly cut grass and wildflowers. Birds were singing their little hearts out, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the giant oak tree Mom had talked about. It felt like stepping into a storybook. Finding the perfect spot was crucial, of course. It couldn't be too close to the path, but not too hidden either. It had to have just the right amount of sun and shade, a good view of the creek. It was a serious business, let me tell you. Finally, after much deliberation, we settled on a spot nestled under the sprawling branches of the oak tree, overlooking a patch of wildflowers. Spreading the tablecloth was another ritual. Mom would hold 2 corners, I'd hold the other 2, and we'd give it a good snap to get rid of any imaginary wrinkles. Then came the unpacking of the feast. Each dish was presented with a flourish, like it was a priceless artifact. Ta-da, Mom would say, unveiling the fried chicken. And now, for the pièce de résistance. The cherry pie. We ate slowly, savoring every bite. The fried chicken was crispy and juicy, the potato salad perfectly creamy, the lemonade tart and sweet. And the cherry pie? Oh, that cherry pie. It was heaven. We talked and laughed, sharing stories and secrets, like 2 best friends on a grand adventure. But the best part? It wasn't the food, though that was amazing. It was the little things. The way the sunlight dappled through the leaves, creating dancing patterns on the tablecloth. The sound of the creek gurgling nearby. The feel of the soft grass between my toes. The buzzing of a bumblebee as it flitted from flower to flower. These were the things that made the picnic so special. And then, there were the ants. Lots and lots of ants. They seemed to appear out of nowhere, drawn by the sweet scent of the cherry pie. They marched in a determined line, straight towards our feast. At first, it was just a few, then more and more, until they were everywhere. I remember squealing and jumping up, brushing them off the tablecloth, off my legs, off my sandals. Mom, ever calm, just chuckled and said, "Well, I guess we're sharing our picnic with some uninvited guests." We tried to salvage what we could, moving the food to a different spot, but the ants were relentless. In the end, we just gave up and surrendered the pie to our tiny invaders. It was a bit frustrating, sure, but looking back, it just adds to the charm of the memory. You know what I mean? It wouldn't be the same without the ant incident. After we finished eating, or rather, after the ants finished eating, we spent the rest of the afternoon exploring the park. We chased butterflies, skipped stones on the creek, and made daisy chains. I remember feeling so free and happy, like the whole world belonged to me. As the sun started to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, we packed up our things and headed back to the bus stop. The wicker basket, now considerably lighter, felt full of something even more precious than food: memories. Looking back, that first picnic wasn't just about the food or the park. It was about the feeling of togetherness, the simple joy of spending time with someone you love, the magic of finding adventure in the ordinary. It was a reminder that happiness doesn't come from grand gestures or expensive things, but from the small, precious moments that make up a life. And it's a memory I'll cherish forever. So yeah, just a simple picnic, but it meant the world to me. You know, those kinds of things, they stick with you. Okay, so, you know how sometimes you get these urges? Like, suddenly you just have to do something? Well, that's how it was with me and indoor gardening. I'd been scrolling through Instagram, right? And everyone seemed to have these lush, thriving jungles in their apartments. Little pots of herbs, trailing vines, even tiny tomatoes. I thought, well, how hard can it be? Famous last words, right? So, I dove in headfirst. Trip to the garden center? Oh, it was an event. I felt like a kid in a candy store. Tiny terracotta pots, sleek ceramic ones, hanging baskets that looked like something out of a fairy tale. And the plants. Oh, the plants. Fuzzy-leaved succulents, fragrant basil, delicate ferns. I wanted them all. I ended up with a cart overflowing with greenery. A rosemary bush that smelled like a Tuscan holiday, a spider plant that promised to be low maintenance, a pot of cheerful pansies, and, get this, a chili plant. A chili plant. In my tiny apartment, I envisioned myself casually snipping fresh chilies for my dinner. The reality, as you'll soon hear, was different. Getting them home was an adventure in itself. I'm pretty sure I brushed every single passerby with a trailing vine. My little Fiat looked like a mobile jungle. But the real fun started when I got them inside. Where to put them? My apartment, while charming, is not exactly spacious. Let's just say it's cozy. So, I started strategizing. Windowsills were prime real estate, obviously. The rosemary got the sunniest spot, the pansies a slightly shadier one. The spider plant, bless its heart, ended up dangling precariously from a bookshelf. And the chili plant? It got a place of honor on my kitchen counter, right next to the fruit bowl. The first few days were idyllic. I'd missed my little plant babies, sing to them, don't judge, and generally fuss over them like they were newborn kittens. I even started talking to them. You're growing so big, I'd tell the rosemary, which, to be fair, was looking quite perky. The pansies were blooming like crazy, little bursts of purple and yellow. Even the spider plant seemed to be enjoying its precarious perch. But then, things took a turn. Remember the chili plant? My pride and joy? Well, it started drooping. Like, dramatically drooping. Its leaves went from a vibrant green to a sickly yellow. I panicked. Had I overwatered it? Underwatered it? Was it too cold? Too hot? Was it dying? I consulted Google, the ultimate authority on all things plant-related. I learned about drainage, fertilization, pH levels. It was information overload. I bought special plant food, a moisture meter, because apparently sticking your finger in the soil isn't scientific enough, and even a tiny fan to improve air circulation. I felt like a mad scientist, conducting experiments on my poor chili plant. The spider plant, meanwhile, had decided to stage a rebellion. Its long, spindly offshoots were reaching out in every direction, tangling themselves around anything within reach. My bookshelves looked like they were being invaded by alien tendrils. The rosemary, bless its hardy soul, was still thriving, but it was starting to smell overpowering. My apartment smelled like a pizzeria after a particularly busy Saturday night. And the pansies? Well, they had bloomed themselves out and were now looking a bit sad. It was chaos. Utter, leafy chaos. My cozy apartment had become a jungle, but not the chic kind you see on Instagram. It was more like the overgrown, slightly menacing kind you see in adventure movies. You half expected Indiana Jones to swing in on a vine, you know? One morning, I woke up to find a spider plant offshoot wrapped around my lampshade. It was the final straw. I sat down on my kitchen floor, surrounded by my unruly plant children, and I laughed. I laughed so hard I cried. It was just so absurd. My grand vision of a tranquil indoor oasis had turned into a comical, slightly stressful mess. But you know what? I also learned a lot. I learned that gardening, even the indoor kind, is not as easy as it looks on social media. It takes time, patience, and a willingness to accept that things won't always go as planned. I learned that plants, like people, have their own personalities and quirks. And I learned that sometimes the best thing you can do is just laugh at the chaos and embrace the imperfections. I did eventually manage to revive the chili plant, by the way. It even produced a few tiny chilies, which I proudly added to my dinner. They were probably the most expensive chilies I've ever eaten, considering the amount of effort and resources I'd invested. But they were mine, grown in my own little, slightly chaotic, indoor jungle. The rosemary? I pruned it back and gave some cuttings to my neighbors. The pansies? Well, they didn't make it, but they taught me a valuable lesson about the cycle of life. And the spider plant? It's still going strong, its tendrils reaching out to explore every corner of my apartment. I've learned to appreciate its adventurous spirit, even if it means occasionally entangling it from my lampshade. So, yeah, that's my indoor gardening story. A tale of ambition, chaos, and a few tiny chilies. It wasn't exactly the serene, Instagram-worthy experience I'd envisioned, but it was definitely an adventure. And you know what? I wouldn't trade it for anything. It taught me that sometimes the most rewarding experiences are the ones that don't go according to plan. And hey, at least I have a good story to tell, right? What about you? Ever tried your hand at indoor gardening? I'd love to hear your stories. Well, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for spending this time with me today and for staying connected throughout the video. I truly appreciate it. If you'd like to keep up with our new daily content focused on English speaking and listening, don't forget to follow, like, subscribe, and share. You know, before we go, it made me wonder, when was the last time you went on a short trip? Planning one soon? It is always so lovely to hear what everyone is thinking about, and sharing your plans is a wonderful way to practice expressing yourself in English and connecting with others in the comments. See you tomorrow. Take good care and keep practicing, every little bit helps.